football. That's right. Nothing changed. I know the Super Bowl has come and gone and was a tough one here in Philadelphia. That's why we're recognizing the great city of St. Louis. Yeah, maybe because their head coach is local product Anthony Becht. So some positive, at least for me, hanging over from the Super Bowl. But each and every week, I'm going to be here. Saturday slate, Sunday slate. I got you with the XFL. We're going to make a lot of money, including something I'm going to tell you before we get out of here about how you can live bet this sport, because there's going to be some great opportunities. 2 games to look at on a Saturday. Let's dive into it. You already know. Thumbs up here, please. Subscribe here, please. Yes, I've got free money for you at DraftKings. Let's head on over there first and foremost. All right, so big theme for this league is going to be specifically quarterback and head coach, and trying to match the two as best we can, especially because we don't have any idea what exactly is going on with this league, right? Until you actually see it. Now, last time the XFL was around, the USFL, we've seen good quarterback play be a big difference, especially combined with a smart head coach. So, Vegas, Brett Hundley. This guy has experience in the NFL, in Green Bay specifically. I know that it's not Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers level experience in that city, but the reality is it's far more than Ben DiNucci or A.J. McCarron even. So you look at Vegas, and I love jumping in here, getting this at +3.5, couple of crazy rules we have to figure as well. Every kickoff basically is going to be returned. You can score up to, you've got a 3-pointer that you can do as far as a 3-point conversion. So you can get up to 9 points. You can technically score 27 points off 3 touchdowns, as crazy as that sounds. So you've got offense, the capabilities of offense. That doesn't always transfer into higher scoring games. We'll get to that in the next one. This one, though, is about Brett Hundley. It's about the NFL game experience that we've seen with Hundley. You have a Martavius Bryant connection there with another seasoned NFL player, a guy who was played at that level. You now have an offensive connection that you don't really need this superpower offensive-minded head coach to foster, cater, facilitate, because you've got Rod Woodson on the other side. So this is now a defensive-minded individual who's going to handle everything but the quarterback to receiver play, basically. Now, they've got a
also didn't really realize the picture that you and your son have the exact same face.
Twins.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
I can't like be like, oh yeah, he's not mine. He's definitely mine.
I like Mike counting us down with one arm. You could have used your good arm to count down. You didn't have to do that and look like an idiot. But yeah, so we've got Mike is showing up through an injury, dislocated his shoulder by falling down 2 steps the other day. It's been a life-altering injury for him. So I feel bad, but at the same time, too, it's kind of funny. As you guys come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to PrizePicks, who is sponsoring the show today. And we've got a weird card, to say the least, for today. And I think for GPPs, there is a lot of value to be had, particularly just by looking at some of the ownerships, because I think a lot of these fights are pretty close to toss-ups. We're going to break them all down right now, myself and Josh Harris. Josh, what's happening? How was your week?
Pretty good. Got NBA All-Star break, so you get a little break from NBA, but that means it's busy time for hockey, so I've been pretty busy with that. But, you know, we got this card here today. I wish there was more than 11 fights because there is no one trustworthy on this card. And if there was like 12, 13 fights, you could see a ton of uniques maybe. Maybe you still can, because I think leaving salary on the table is a nice way to get different here today. But man, this card, we've gone like last week was a great card. This week, not so much, but we have some really, really good ones coming up.
Yeah. So, you know, so the name quality of this card isn't great, but I think a lot of the fights are going to be fun just because I think so many of them are going to finish inside the distance. Now, there's going to be some shitty ones too. Don't get me wrong. A lot of these have the Tyson Pedro fight from last week written all over them, which was a fight that I was pretty sure was going to suck. The Pedro Pagues fight, but it had some variance to it. That's like a handful of these fights this week, but some of them are going to end up finishing. Some are going to end up finishing early. So I'm excited to break it down, see what some of your angles are on the fight and the fights. And, you know, right away, my favorite fight to target is the main event. I think no matter who wins, whoever's able to implement their game plan is going to score extremely well, because if Andrade wins, I assume means that she was able to defend Erin Blanchfield's takedowns. And this could just end up looking like the Jessica Andrade versus Lauren Murphy fight from a few weeks ago, where Murphy wasn't able to take her down. It played out on the feet. Andrade had a massive striking advantage. I think she's going to have a massive striking advantage over Erin Blanchfield. I think that is a very clear path to victory for her. However, if Blanchfield's able to take her down once, I don't really see any reason she wouldn't be able to take her down a bunch of times, because the last time I saw Andrade get taken down was her title fight against Valentina Shevchenko. She went 7 of 7 on takedowns in that fight. So whoever wins this fight, I think is going to score extremely well. I was actually really confident on Andrade early in the week. And then what happens? The UFC puts out some promo pictures. We see Jessica Andrade like posing in the octagon. She's wearing a splint on her hand. And that then starts to make me think like, oh, did she punch Lauren Murphy so many times in the face that she injured herself? Like, that's actually what I think might have happened here. She's still my preferred side of the event, but I was going to go like 100% Andrade and like none of Blanchfield. And now I'm just going to be heavier on the Andrade side. A little bit of questions for me just surrounding the health of her hand, given that she was wearing a splint in that picture. But Josh, how are you approaching this fight?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting with that injury aspect. I don't know if it affects Andrade that much. She's just an absolute tank. Like, she's just she scares me. Like, if I saw her in an alley, I would just play dead, I think. But like, Blanchfield's an up and coming undefeated prospect, or she's undefeated in the UFC. She has 1 loss on her record. She recently just subbed Molly McCann in the first round with the Kimura, but like, Molly McCann does not have any takedown defense. She's not very good on the mat. Molly McCann, a lot of fun on the feet, a big liability on the mat. Now, coming into this Andrade fight, she could have her coming out party here. She could take, she possibly could get a wrestling game going, get Jessica Andrade down. Jessica Andrade has decent takedown defense, 73%. Now, that's a bit skewed because Valentina Shevchenko, who is, I think, the best women's fighter of all time. You can argue that with, some other fighters. But I still think she is the best of all time. Took her down 7 times, just dominated her, knocked her out in the second round. But, looking through her other fights, the last time she got taken down outside of that fight was in 2018 by Tecia Torres, which she also took Tecia Torres down 10 times in that fight. Can Blanchfield get her down? Probably. But Jessica Andrade doesn't accept bottom. She's gonna fight her way back up. And on the feet, Jessica Andrade has a big advantage. Like, I've seen people say, like, yeah, Blanchfield's improving on her feet. And that may be true. But like, Blanchfield, got Sarah Alpar up against the cage and started unloading. Jessica Andrade is not Sarah Alpar. Jessica Andrade, the first punch she landed on Sarah Alpar would put her through the cage. So, like, I'm a bit conflicted here because there is definitely a path to victory here for Blanchfield. If she can consistently get, Andrade down, Andrade is going to work her way back up and Blanchfield is going to take her down again. I just don't have confidence that is likely going to happen. I think Blanchfield may be successful a bit early, but Andrade is going to put so much pressure on her with her hands. Andrade has the wrestling aspect as well. And again, like, Blanchfield struggled to take JJ Aldridge down. JJ Aldridge landed the takedowns in that fight. Yeah, Blanchfield won by guillotine, but Aldridge initiated those takedowns and got her down. I just feel like Andrade has multiple paths to victory here. She's has advantage in the striking. I think she has advantage in offensive wrestling. Now, defensive wrestling, you can argue that, it's probably about even, but I think Andrade just, her cardio is better. She doesn't get tired. Her output's higher. Her offensive wrestling is arguably better because she'll shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot until she gets you down. So, I don't want to discount Blanchfield because I think she's one of the best tournament plays on the slate, because if she wins, she's under 8K. She's going to have wrestling involved. She could maybe she finds a submission. You know what I mean? But it's hard for me to think at 23 years old, a fighter who struggled to get Aldridge down, to favor Andrade here. Her win against Miranda Maverick was very impressive. Took her down 7 times, just, beat her to a pulp. But I don't know. Andrade is just a different beast. If she can get through Andrade, she's going to get a title shot. I don't know if she's ready for this matchup yet.
Yeah, no, I don't see it too dissimilarly. Just my biggest concern is how healthy is Andrade. And I wish the promo photo almost didn't come out with her with the hand, where it wasn't even something that was in the back of my mind. But like I said, I prefer the Andrade side of the main event, but I'm going to be playing both sides of it. But my initial read when I first saw this fight got rebooked was I was going to be all Andrade and none of Blanchfield. And now I'm just going to be heavier on the Andrade side, a little bit of Blanchfield too as a hedge. But if you guys are just playing 1 lineup, 2 lineups, 3, I would say go with Andrade for anybody who's wondering which side would I prefer or where I think you guys should be leaning. And by far, that's the best fight of the night. Because once you get past the main event, everything kind of becomes either lower level fights or just super, super sketchy fights. The co-main event is Jordan Wright versus Zach Pagues. And if you saw Pagues fight against Muhammad Usman in the Ultimate Fighter finale, he looked like absolute shit in that fight. He won the first round, then gets knocked out at the start of the second. I get he was undersized. He wasn't really a heavyweight who's fighting at heavyweight, but Usman is terrible. Don't let the name fool you. Muhammad Usman is not a good fighter. But now what's kind of weird about it is, so you got Pagues, who's moving down to his natural weight class. He's going to be taking on Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright is a really fast starter. I think the line is too wide here. I think this fight scores extremely well. Whoever wins is going to put up a massive score. But I don't think Pagues is any good. And I think Jordan Wright is really live early on in the fight. So he's one of my favorite underdogs on the card, just from a standpoint of, I think he sucks. I think Pagues sucks, but it's a wide line. And I know that if Jordan Wright wins, it's probably a first round finish.
Yeah, everyone in this fight sucks. Zach Pagues got knocked out by a jab. It wasn't even a flashy strike. He took a jab to the chin and just crumbled, basically. It was weird. That fight was just ugly. And Zach Pagues, historically not high output, you know what I mean? Yeah. Jordan Wright comes out with his hair on fire and then just dies if he can't finish it. So this fight, if I know Pagues goes the distance a lot, but if I don't know what the over under 2.5 is, but I probably bet the under here. Jordan Wright has 2 wins in the UFC, both by first round knockout in 90 seconds. Knocked out Ike Villanueva. Congrats. Everyone knocks out Ike Villanueva. Knocked out Jamie Pickett. Congrats. Everyone knocks out Jamie Pickett. He actually looked pretty good against Dusko Todorovic. Got into the second round, and he just got, knocked out by an elbow. He landed 3 takedowns in that fight, and that's an interesting angle, because Jordan Wright, kind of a karate guy, throws a lot of kicks. He is powerful. He is moving up to 205. If Zach Pagues is getting, crumpled by a jab, Muhammad Usman's a big fella, but Jordan Wright's not small. He's just a goofy Beverly Hills Ninja. He's just a goofball, but he's live in round 1. Don't get me wrong. I think he can land some heavy shots on Pagues and get him out of here. The problem is if he doesn't, this fight is either Pagues is going to take over or it's just going to be an absolute ugly round 2 and 3. I think Zach Pagues is a very, very good target here. He's a bit pricey though for me, 9,200. He's sandwiched in between Clayton Carpenter and AJ Fletcher, and then we have Mario Bueno Silva at 9,500. That's just a scene in itself. But none of these top range fighters really are trustworthy. So I think you have to take some shots here on Zach Pagues. But I agree with you. I think Jordan Wright is one of my favorite underdog plays, especially in the there's 5 fighters 7,200 and under. There's Josh Parisian, who we'll talk about, Gorimbo, then you have Wright, then you have Juan Camilo Ronderos, Lena Lansberg. The 7,200, it's Jordan Wright. And I think if he wins, it's going to be by early knockout and he's going to be optimal. So, his floor isn't very high, but his ceiling is certainly very high in this matchup.
Just because you asked that, what would you guess the line is for under 2.5 rounds in this fight?
I would say minus 250 at least.
Minus 455 is it for under? So that's not a playable number, but it goes to show you how likely the books are seeing this as a fight that's going to finish somewhat early. And Jordan Wright, for a card also, it's kind of funny because you would think Jordan Wright, this guy was like kill or be killed. You think all right, well, his floor has to be 0. In an extent, it kind of is, but his output is also so high early. His last fight against Dusko Todorovic, he gets finished in the second round and scores 42 fantasy points because the output was so high for him in the first round. Jordan Wright to me is a very live underdog, and I think it's a pretty good leverage play off of Pagues, who we have projected right now for nearly 40% ownership. So looking at our ownership right now,
Pagues is just he's like a guy. If you create a fighter, he's like Zach Pagues.
And I like both sides of the fight, but in terms of large field tournaments, I do think Jordan Wright makes for a really good tournament play. Current ownership right now, we have Erin Blanchfield projected for just under 50% ownership, then Andrade at 42. So we basically got the main event universally owned, which I agree with. I think that should be the case.
Should be, yeah.
Yeah, we've got the field on this fight 90% of the time. Then Clayton Carpenter 40% owned, Pagues 39%, AJ Fletcher 38%. Then we got Bueno Silva at 36%. No, thank you. We'll talk about her in a little bit. And then Pagues also at 36%. So in terms of how I'm looking at which of the expensive fighters have the most finishing equity, to me, I would group these ones together, like Carpenter, Pagues, and Fletcher, and then Pagues, who we're going to talk about in a second, and Bueno Silva. I don't really have much interest in them above 9K.
Yeah, I kind of agree there. Clayton Carpenter has finishing upside just because Juan Camilo Ronderos sucks. The line is weird. That fight to finish inside the distance is a bit surprising. It's favored to end inside the distance. And I think it's just because Juan Camilo Ronderos sucks. There's literally no other explanation for that. AJ Fletcher is an absolute Tasmanian devil. And I think he can finish, but if he doesn't, he's just going to, be absolutely exhausted by the third round and probably get finished himself. But yeah, 10 of the 11 fights are favored to end inside the distance. So there's going to be a lot of memes, and these fights are just absolute clown shows. And but none of these expensive guys I trust. I think if anybody, I'm going to take shots on AJ Fletcher, which we'll talk about, just because he has multiple paths to victory. He comes out with his hair on fire. He scores well in losses. And I don't know. He's kind of I think he's fighting for his job, honestly.
I think everybody on this card is fighting for his
maybe,
job.
Yeah.
This should, that should be the theme of the card is if you really want to hype this card and make it more interesting, it's everybody who wins is employed, everybody who loses is cut. And that's kind of what I think is good, with the exception being, all right, so the main event, Blanchfield, Andrade, both clearly safe. Is there any other fighter on this entire card? Jim Miller is safe.
Yeah.
Outside of Jim Miller and the main event, is there anybody else do you think is likely to keep a job with a loss today?
Maybe Jamal Emmers, just because he's crazy and he's an idiot. His fight IQ is non-existent and he puts on fun fights and he's probably on his first contract. So maybe him. But outside of that, I don't think so. Lena Lansberg is 700 years old. And Alex Hernandez, if he loses to Jim Miller here, he's gone. You know what I mean? Marcin Prachnio, I have no idea how he's still in the UFC. Same with William Knight. He got finished by Devin Clark, which should have been an automatic cut. If you get finished by strikes by Devin Clark, that should be an automatic pink slip. So I don't think anyone's safe.
And you got OSP, who I guess would also just by default qualify as one of the biggest names on the card. His fights are not only is he bad, his fight's been unwatchable for a while now.
He couldn't finish the ghost of Shogun Rua. He went to a split decision. In 2022 with Shogun Rua. You sneeze on Shogun Rua and he gets knocked out.
Split decision win for OSP. In that fight, he scored 55 fantasy points in that win. It's been bad. I
guess
But like I said, there are individual fights I think we could really isolate, like the one we just talked about, Pagues and Jordan Wright, clearly good DFS fight. Main event, Blanchfield Andrade, clearly good DFS fight. The next one, I'm a little more skeptical on because we've got Jamal Pagues taking on Josh Parisian. And this is one of the fights where if you look at some of the betting odds, this one is one of the ones more likely to go to decision. Now, not overwhelmingly. It's still, kind of like 50-50. We got minus 125 to go to decision, minus 105 to finish inside the distance. But just relative to the other fights at the high end, I don't really have interest in Jamal Pagues. I said the other fighters I'd much rather pay up for. And then I guess by default, Parisian is my preferred option in this fight just because I don't feel great about a lot of the underdogs. But this is a pretty low priority fight relative to the other ones we've talked about and a lot of the other ones we are going to talk about.
Yeah, I really wanted to like Jamal Pagues because on his first Dana White Contender Series fight in 2019, he attempted 11 takedowns, landed 7 of them. Josh Parisian sucks defending takedowns. His takedown defense is 42%. He got taken down 6 times by Dontel Mays, which is, I guess that's fine. He got taken down twice by Parker Porter. You know what I mean? Like, Jamal Pagues has a wrestling path to victory here, and I want to like him on this card. He's 9K. Like, if I knew he was going to come with a wrestling heavy game plan, I think he can get a finish on the mat. But then in his second Dana White Contender Series fight, which was in August, he didn't attempt a single takedown. He attempted 2, was unsuccessful, and it was just low output on the feet. It was just an ugly decision. He gets hit more than he lands 3.93 significant strikes per minute. He absorbs 4.1. And the thing with Parisian, he has output. Like, that's the only thing you can say about him. Like, these, low-level heavyweights, he lands almost 5 significant strikes per minute. He absorbs over 5 significant strikes per minute. Like, it's just, these guys get hit more than they hit it like the other guy. If Pagues wrestles, he has a path here. If not, it's just going to be okay output on the feet going to decision, which is going to score what, like 75, 80 points, which is ugly. So, like, I don't really love this fight unless I knew Pagues is going to wrestle, which I don't know. So I think, like, in GPPs, you can take some stabs on Pagues and just hope he wrestles, but there's no guarantee there.
So here's the question of the high end. There's 2, to me, fairly clear worst options that are 9K or high. And also, like I said before in ownership, almost all of these fighters, 9K and above, similarly owned. Refreshing it right now. Pagues 36%, Fletcher 38%, Pagues 39%, Clayton Carpenter 40%, Myra Bueno Silva 36%. Right, so they're all fairly popular. We don't have to worry too much about, at least in ownership projection, the difference between these fighters. Of these 5, is Pagues or Bueno Silva your least favorite? Because I think it has to be one of those 2.
Oh, it's Bueno Silva.
Okay.
She has won her last 4, or she's won 4 of her last 5 by submission without landing a takedown. How's that even, like, she's a striker and she's winning by like armbar and guard, which is not sustainable. Like, it happens in women's MMA, but it is just not sustainable.
And bad scores in those fights. So
yeah,
she has, this is actually insane. She has 3 first-round finishes in the UFC. She has scored under 100 points in all 3 of them.
That's almost hard to do. Yeah.
It's difficult. If you were trying to do it, it would be difficult.
Yeah, because she like gets taken down and finds an armbar on guard. But like Lena Lansberg, like, I don't know. I just have no interest. I mean, like, if I was playing 150, I'd have some Maria Bueno Silva, obviously, but I'm only playing one lineup tonight. She's not going to be in it.
Yeah, definitely not a fight that I am looking to prioritize at all. Either of those, actually. And so we were just talking about the Pagues Parisian fight. Like, I feel pretty good about saying Pagues is a safe bet to win tonight. But at the same time, too, I just think he has the same upside as a lot of the other high-end fighters. So with that in mind, my slightly preferred side is Josh Parisian, who I also don't think is going to win. But if you're asking me what are the more likely outcomes, Parisian wins outright or Pagues outscores all the other fighters over 9K, I think Parisian winning is more likely. And that's kind of what I see as the path of these fighters being optimal. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, Parisian is super low level, though, too. Like, he got knocked down by Alan Badeau, who's awful. I mean, he won that. He ended up coming back and winning that fight in the second round with knockout, but like getting knocked down by Alan Badeau. He lost to Parker Porter, lost to Dontel Mays. barely squeaked out a decision against Roque Martinez. So like this is as low level as it gets.
Yeah, and I mean that could be said about a lot of these cards, but a lot of the fights on this card, but still a very low priority fight to target overall on the slate. Now we've got a question in our Discord channel. By the way, if you guys want to get access to our Discord channel, just sign up for Stokastic Plus Platinum membership, because when you do sign up, you can get access to all the tools we have for every single DFS sport. And when you sign up for the first time using the link we have below, you're going to get 50% off. One of the things that gets you access to is our Discord channel, as well as, like I said, tools, player projections, ownership projections for every single DFS sport you could think of. But also, we're sponsored by PrizePicks today. And if you guys have the availability to sign up at PrizePicks and haven't done it yet, if you do that using our link, you will get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. And we do have a question related to it from 1.6, our guy in our Discord channel. He's saying, my favorite touts. Can you take a look at PrizePicks and tell me if anything stands out to you? So yeah, let's head on over to PrizePicks. Help our guy 1.6. I could be mistaken here, but I don't think I think whenever he's asked us for our favorite PrizePicks picks, I think we've won all of our ones so far since we've been doing this together.
We have, yeah. He's been shouting us out Sunday mornings when I can't even. I have like one bloodshot eye open at like 9 a.m. It's like, buddy, it's Sunday. Like you're up grinding ready. I made it through the whole card last week. I made it to like 1 a.m. Was hurting on Sunday. I'm old.
Yeah,
I do have a prize pick ready if you want mine first.
I see one that stands out to me. Hit me with yours.
I was gonna go Alex Hernandez under 10 minutes of fight time.
Okay, that was the one that I had highlighted right here. I love that, by the way.
Yeah.
I think this is a great matchup for Alexander Hernandez, and that's actually one of the fights we have to talk about like 2 fights from now. The next one we have is William Knight and Marcin Prachnio. But this is a great fight for DFS. Alexander Hernandez, incredibly untrustworthy, but he comes out hot early. I mean, we saw him knock out Beneil Dariush in like 20 seconds. And I know that Jim Miller has some wins on his resume as of late. They are not impressive wins, though. He has fought either aging veterans or newcomers that didn't belong at this level. I think Alexander Hernandez finishes him fairly early. And if Alexander Hernandez doesn't finish him early, Hernandez gasses fairly quick. And then I think Hernandez would probably get like taken down and subbed or something like that. But yeah, I like the under for Alexander Hernandez. I'm on the same page as you.
Jim Miller hasn't won by decision since 2016.
And Alexander Hernandez has never looked good past 3 minutes in a fight ever.
Neither is Jim Miller.
Yeah, so it's going to be sloppy. I think somebody gets finished in that fight. Let's see. What's another one? I'm kind of tempted to say the Felipe Lins and Ovince St. Preux over 12.5 minutes. Like I was saying earlier, I think that one's got shades of the Tyson Pedro and Modesto Bukauskas fight from last week written all over it in terms of, like, is there finishing equity? Yes. But it's really hard to reliably predict a finish when the fighters just stare at each other and do not throw very much output, which was the reason that we talked about that fight last week and didn't really like it. So Felipe Lins and Ovince St. Preux, I kind of like the over on that fight. Let's see, what are the takedown lines here?
AJ Fletcher's at 1.5. That's interesting to me.
It's hard to know what he's going to do because I think he has so many advantages over like everywhere against.
I think he knows what he's going to do either. That's the problem. He has no idea what he's going to do.
Let me look at some of the fight score lines. How about Bueno Silva under 90.5 fantasy points?
I think that's a good line too. Because even if she wins, I don't think. Like I don't have a feeling. Like, is she going to find an armbar and guard against Lena Lansberg? Like Lena Lansberg wants to get that like fight hanging on the cage. I just think if it gets out of the first round, it's going to be ugly low scoring.
I think this one's a good call too. We have Vic PB Killer in chat said Jessica Andrade over 61.5 significant strikes. Yeah, Andrade's volume is ridiculous. I think. I mean, she was doing that in like over individual rounds against Lauren Murphy in her last fight.
Yeah, she landed 231 significant strikes in 3 rounds against Lauren Murphy. In the second round, she landed 75. In the third round, she landed 95. In the first round, I don't know what she was doing. Only landed 61. So, yeah.
I think she's a big striking advantage over in Blanchfield. So that's a good call. I'll get behind that one as well. So from a Vic PB killer, I do like Andrade over significant strikes. So there's 3 that we like there. We took the over 61.5 for Jessica Andrade. For the fight time, I like over 12.5 for Felipe Lins and OSP. And then the other one we had here was under 10 minutes for Alexander Hernandez, Jim Miller.
So, yeah, that was both our favorites, which I kind of sniped from you there.
I mean, not really. It's not like we talked about it ahead of time.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
1.6. Hopefully that helps you out, and hopefully there's some more winning picks for you. Let's move on to the next fight. William Knight against Marcin Prachnio. Another fight of 2 guys who are incredibly untrustworthy. I prefer the William Knight side of the fight. There's about equal ownership going here. William Knight has really big power. Unfortunately, that is reliant on him throwing strikes at some point in time. But just considering how both of these guys fight, I think William Knight has more finishing equity. Therefore, I like him more as a DFS target. Not a fight you guys should be playing in cash games whatsoever. But William Knight, and if we're trying to play a narrative, he looked to be in really good shape when he stepped on the scales the other day. And I mean, he's always built just like an absolute tank, but it did look like he lost a little bit of body weight ahead of this fight. Maybe that helps out his cardio as well. So William Knight, Marcin Prachnio, okay fight to target in tournaments. I prefer the Knight side.
Yeah, he fought Devin Clark up at heavyweight because like 3 days before the fight, he's like, there's no shot of me making 205. So like they probably, the UFC probably read him the riot act. Like he got knocked down and finished by Devin Clark at heavyweight. That's awful. So like, yeah, he probably got a nutritionist. He looked in very good shape. The thing is, like, the fight before that, going to decision with Maxime Grishin, like Grishin limits strikes very well, but like William Knight doesn't throw in heavy volume. 2.95 significant strikes per minute, 2.99 strikes absorbed per minute, 2.07 takedowns. I think he has a wrestling advantage here. Prachnio defends at 53%, which is awful. Got taken down 4 times by Felipe Lins, taken down by Ike Villanueva. Like, that's just a massive red flag there. So, like, yeah, I think William Knight has multiple paths here. The problem is if it gets extended, how is William Knight's cardio? He gassed out bad against, Devin Clark. Maybe, he looks to be in good shape. Maybe it is improved. But I think there is a path for Prachnio if it gets out of the first round. It's going to be pretty ugly, though, if it gets out of the first round. I think William Knight does have more finishing equity. I do think Prachnio is fairly live if he doesn't get decapitated. Just based off output, he lands 5.84 significant strikes per minute. He has the higher output. William Knight kind of picks his spots with, the massive power. So I can't believe I'm saying this. I think Prachnio is the better round winner in this fight, which is just insane to say because Prachnio is 2-4 in the UFC and he's been knocked out 3 times. But like William Knight just doesn't throw. When he does, it's devastating. But I just think, there is more of a path for Prachnio to win by decision. I think Knight has the finishing equity here.
Yeah, and once again, neither of them particularly trustworthy. William Knight, I think, is the much better athlete. I think he's more talented, but just doesn't do very much in his fights. But still, he's going to be my pick to win. And if he does win, I think he's live to score fairly well. So that's the way I'm leaning in tournaments. The next fight, Alexander Hernandez versus Jim Miller. Hernandez is one of my favorite fighters on the entire card. I think this is a really good matchup for him against Jim Miller. I think he finishes him probably by knockout in the first round. You just have to get concerned if it goes past the first round. Does Alex Hernandez gas? The good news is I don't think this fight goes past the first round. So I like Alexander Hernandez, and he's one of my most rostered players in tournaments. Jim Miller isn't a fade for me, but I'm way heavier on the Hernandez side.
Yeah, like the thing is, like if Alexander Hernandez starts to fade, Jim Miller is going to be fading as well. Like he doesn't look very good past the halfway point of the second round either. He lost, like Alexander Hernandez's last fight, he got kind of, Billy Quarantillo'd. He just got melted. It wasn't like Quarantillo just was wrestle fucking him. Like Jim Miller, his path to victory is on the mat, but Alexander Hernandez is a wrestler by trade, and he has fairly good takedown defense, 61%. It's not great, but you look at the losses, like he got taken down twice by Renato Moicano. That's forgivable. He's a beast. He got taken down twice by Billy Q, but that was, Hernandez was starting to gas already when Billy Q started to land the takedowns. Got taken down twice by Olivier Aubin Mercier, but like Alexander Hernandez won that fight and out wrestled him there. So I just think, Alexander Hernandez has a striking advantage pretty blatantly. I think he is decently good defensive wrestling. He also has the offensive wrestling. He lands 1.63 takedowns per 15. Jim Miller defense takedowns is 47%. That's the one thing people don't talk about with Jim Miller, because he has so many wins by submission, is he can't really defend takedowns. You know what I mean? So I think if Hernandez wants to wrestle early, I think he has that path as well. I agree. I think this fight ends pretty quickly, and I prefer the Hernandez side. But like, again, there's these untrustworthy dogs. A lot of these fighters are untrustworthy. Jim Miller does have an interesting path here, and if he does win, it's going to be by finish, and it's going to be fairly early. So I don't mind taking stabs on Jim Miller as an underdog at 7,300, but my preferred side is Hernandez as well.
And, we got a question on our Discord channel from Noah, Nooah. So Noah, but he's saying one player to lock and one player to 2x the field in DK. He said that he's leaning towards Fletcher there. So I'm going to say my lock is Fletcher, but fighter to 2x the field, I'm going to go with Alex Hernandez.
Same. I just think, if he loses this fight, he should be cut. This is the perfect matchup for him, I think.
Yeah, and that's what I'm picking here. I'm going first round knockout for Alex Hernandez. He's somebody I have a lot of exposure to. He was the first fighter I bought Rainmakers cards up for this weekend as well, because I've been playing a good amount of Rainmakers. So Hernandez, I thought, was way underpriced. So getting exposure to him there as well. So one of my favorite pay up options. He's not quite at the 9K range, but in that upper 8K range, he's my favorite fighter of anybody. And the next fight then is one that I don't really know what to do with. We've got Sadykhov taking on Evan Elder, and this is another fight that's not overly likely to end up going to the judge to end up finishing inside the distance. So this fight, let's look at the most recent odds, is currently plus 110 to go to decision, minus 130 finish inside the distance. So slightly more likely to finish than not. But once again, there's a lot of fights that are like minus 500, minus 300 to finish inside the distance for this card. And this one is not quite those kind of odds. So the fight we were just talking about before, minus 260 for Alex Hernandez and Jim Miller to finish inside the distance. I don't really know what to make of this fight. I don't have any strong leans. I'm just not playing it very often. If there's a fight like this where I'm kind of uncertain about, Evan Elder is less expensive. He's also far less owned. It's not a fight I'm crazy interested in. Sadykhov is my pick to win, but Elder's a live underdog, so I'm willing to take shots on him, but not the best DFS fight to target just based on some of the betting data on it.
Yeah, I think Sadykhov needs a finish to be optimal. Like I like his camp. He fights out of Ray Longo's camp in Long Island. They have some killers in there, but he's undersized for 155. He only has a 69-inch reach. He looked pretty good in his Dana White Contender Series fight. The problem for me here, he doesn't have very high output. Like, yeah, he landed 4.42 significant strikes per minute in that fight, but it ended early in the third round, only 53 significant strikes. He had the knockdown. But, the guy, Ahmad Hassanzada, landed 2 of 9 takedowns in that fight. He was looking to wrestle a bunch. I think, Evan Elder, he's decent everywhere. He's not very good anywhere. But, and he got controlled pretty badly by Preston Parsons in his last fight. I'm favoring Sadykhov in this fight, but I just don't think it's going to be very high scoring unless he has an early finish, which I like based off the Vegas odds isn't very probable. So this is one of the fights that I'm probably going to be under the field on.
Evan Elder's odds to win inside round 1. By the way, we have an Evan Elder in our Discord chat, I believe, as well. So not the same person, but he is fired up for this fight per Discord. And then we also had a question from GG123 saying, do we think the main event is stackable for small fields? Only for cash games. I wouldn't do it in tournaments.
Yeah, Jessica Andrade used to be stackable, but now she's just either dominating or getting dominated. It's not like she's having these Claudia Gadelha fights back and forth in high school. Like, I'd rather, instead of stacking the main event, leave some salary on the table and just get a little bit different. I just think that's a better path.
By the way, I looked it up. Sadykhov is anywhere from like plus 350 to plus 440 to win in the first round. Not super
great.
likely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fights that you and I are expecting to finish early today. So not one that I'm going to be getting to. And the next fight, my least favorite one on the entire card, Mayra Bueno Silva against Lena Lansberg. Lena Lansberg is 40 years old. She's terrible. Bueno Silva has skills. She just doesn't utilize them. She's a very good grappler. It doesn't matter if you don't wrestle, you don't look for takedowns. But when her fights end up on the mat, like we were talking about before, she's an opportunistic grappler, and she gets finishes from the bottom, which happens a lot in low-level women's MMA. The problem here, though, is Bueno Silva is so expensive, and there's so few underdogs that I feel good about that I can't really take shots on her. We were talking about it before. She has finished 3 fights in the first round in the UFC, and has scored less than 100 points in all of them. So it's just hard for me to look at that and expect her to finish well, to score well, even in a first round finish. So this is a fight that I am just kind of writing off for the most part.
Yeah, like Lena Lansberg doesn't really throw high volume, 2.7 strikes per 50 or per 15 minutes. She's, in her 40s now. She did knock down Carol Hossa in her last fight, which was in October, and still lost the fight by majority decision, like not capitalizing on your moments there. Like Mayra Bueno Silva, on the other hand, like armbarred Stephanie Egger, which was that weird one where Egger said she didn't tap, but she clearly did.
Yeah.
That was an armbar. She wants a decision with Wu Yinan, didn't even land a takedown in that fight. Then she lost by decision, a couple by, like, she doesn't land takedowns. She has never landed a takedown in the UFC. For winning by armbar so much, no takedowns in the UFC. She has decent output, 4.23 significant strikes per minute, but absorbs 5.01. Like, her metrics aren't good. The problem is Lena Lansberg metrics are even worse. I think Silva wins this fight, and I think she should win fairly easily. But again, like, is she going to outscore some of these other guys in that range? Highly unlikely, even if she gets an early finish by armbar. Like you just mentioned, she's under 100 there, and it has to be in the first round. Like, I don't know. I was shocked to see her the most expensive fighter on the board. Can she pay off her salary? Anything's possible, but if I had to put money on it, I don't think she's going to be the highest scorer on the slate.
And if I had to bet a side of the fight, it would be the Lansberg side, just because the line is so stupid. But like, to me, everything, like, I can't play Bueno Silva at 9,500. I clearly expect her to win, but I'm not going to bet her as a minus 500 favorite in the fight either. So this fight is one that if you guys are playing like a handful of lineups, you're only playing 5, 10, like, to me, this is the first fight take out of your player pool.
Oh yeah. Like, Lena Lansberg's so cheap, but she doesn't do anything. She hasn't won a fight since 2019, and that was by decision. Like, her wins aren't even that great. She doesn't have any wins by finish. She's 4-7 in the UFC. It's just, now she's in her 40s. For being nicknamed the elbow queen, she doesn't have any finishes with her elbows. So I don't know. Like, this fight is my least favorite on the card, I think. And that's saying something.
Yeah, so that fight is my least favorite fight to target on the entire card. Not really going to be getting exposure there. And 20 minutes left to go until lock. So I just uploaded my line. It's probably going to be, I don't imagine I'm going to make any more adjustments. A lot of times when I'm doing this and I'm talking through fights, I'll look at my exposure, be like, I need to change this. But that's going to be the last change that I make of the night. And the next one, Jamal Emmers versus Askhabov. This is another fight that's super weird. Askhabov is undefeated. He has never lost in his entire career, but he's fought very low-level competition and hasn't fought in 3 years. And I think Jamal Emmers is good. Like, I don't know if Askhabov is a good fighter or not. Even though he's undefeated, he doesn't look all that impressive when you watch some of the tapes that we actually have evidence of. Most of his fights, you can't find anything about them. You don't even know if they happened. There's so little evidence of them. Jamal Emmers, though, you look at his run in the UFC, he was fairly hyped up when he first came in. For reference, his first fight in the UFC was against Giga Chikadze. He was bet up to a minus 200 favorite in that fight. He ended up losing. I thought he won. I personally scored that fight for Jamal Emmers. Rewatched it. Still thought that Emmers won.
Outstruck him.
Yeah, and to me, this is probably the easiest matchup Emmers has had to this point in the UFC. It just is how much has Askhabov improved during the 3 years he hasn't been training? There's no way, or the 3 years he hasn't fought, there's no way to really know. But the ownership right now, we have 34% going to Askhabov, 19% going to Jamal Emmers. Can you talk me out of Emmers being my favorite leverage play of the day?
Like, Okay, the one thing I'll say about Jamal Emmers is his fight IQ is idiotic in his last fight, and he's coming off an injury. He had Pat Sabatini on the ropes, and he rolled for a heel hook against Pat Sabatini, who's known for heel hooks. And what happened? He got heel hooked in the first round. I just like he has really good metrics though. It's just like this Askhabov guy, undefeated on the Ukrainian regional scene, which for obvious reasons they haven't fought in 3 years. He hasn't gone past 7 minutes in 7 years. Like, I just don't know anything. Like, on the tape that I saw of him, he looked okay. Like, I just think Emmers is better everywhere. It's just fight IQ. I can't trust Emmers as far as I can throw him. It's under 8K. I think I have to take some shots on here.
Yeah. So, like I was saying before, I don't have a real expectation of this fight, especially when one of the guys, Askhabov, he's making his UFC debut. He's undefeated, but he hasn't fought in 3 years. What you could find on him is not all that impressive, but I do think Jamal Emmers is good. And the field is, at least as of right now, not playing him. And Askhabov is the most popular fighter in the mid-range that we have of the entire slate. So just based on the unknown elements we have here, I think it just makes more sense in tournaments to be on the Jamal Emmers side. And now we're going to see another thing where he clearly wins the first round and a half and then gets like heel hooked or something dumb in the tail end of the second round. Like you said, low fight IQ on Jamal Emmers. That would prevent him from being somebody I'd recommend in cash games. Tournaments, though, he's my favorite mid-range option just because of the number one, the leverage we're getting, and number two, I think he's legitimately good. And I think I thought he beat Giga in their fight against each other. So Emmers, love him in tournaments. Seems like you are on the same page. Next fight, Felipe Lins against OSP, Ovince St. Preux. Hard for me to have interest in this fight. I think it is going to be incredibly low output. That's basically what every single OSP fight is. At this point in his career, every single OSP fight becomes a staring contest. Even some of the fights where he ends up finishing, he still doesn't score all that well. Also, how far of a drop from OSP? He was John Jones's return fight for the interim light heavyweight championship. Now on the worst, one of the worst cards we've seen in some time. He is the third fight of the entire night. And OSP's, he lands 2.72 significant strikes per minute. Lins lands 3.4. I think this is going to be a fight that's just fought at distance. Maybe somebody hurts the other one, but most likely I think this goes to decision. It's a staring contest. It sucks. So I do not like this fight for DFS, but could you try to convince me otherwise?
Yeah, Felipe Lins is a PFL champion, $1 million. And I think, money. He looked awful against Andrei Orlovsky in 2020. Then he got knocked out by Tanner Boser. Then he beat Prachnio. He landed 4 takedowns in that fight. He looked pretty good, but like OSP just is the definition of slow pace. His output's terrible. He doesn't absorb much. He has some offensive wrestling. He's pretty decent at takedown defense. Like, I just feel like this fight is going to be pretty low paced on the feet. Maybe Lins mixes in a takedown, but like I wouldn't count on it. So for the most part, you're going to see, Ovince St. Preux plodding forward, throwing a kick here and there, throwing a jab here and there. Lins may have the higher output, but it's not going to be great. So like, yeah, I have to favor Lins, but at his price on DraftKings at 8,800, it's just a tough pill to swallow with Andrade at 8,500, Alexander Hernandez right above him. I guess the only positive thing I could say is Lins is going to be fairly contrarian. We have him projected at 23% right now. I maybe he can hurt OSP here, but like, can you count on that? I don't know. Like, OSP has been knocked out. He also got knocked out by Tanner Boser, got knocked out by Jamal Hill. Like, is Lins Jamal Hill? No. Like, Tanner Boser, yeah, maybe he's comparable to Tanner Boser, but like I just can't count on it. So yeah, I think I'm going to be under the field here on this fight, and just hope it's kind of like the Tyson Pedro fight last week, which was ugly.
Yeah, I think it's very similar on paper to that fight, and I really don't like when a fighter is pretty reliant on getting a first round finish, hitting their DFS upside, which is what I view Felipe Lins as. If he doesn't get a first round knockout, he's going to bust on this card. And there's so many other high-priced fighters who I think have other paths. Like, even when I talked about Alex Hernandez earlier, like, Hernandez is still an aggressive striker. He still wrestles. So like, we could see him still end up winning by like a second round finish. I think he can score fairly well. If Lins doesn't get the first round finish, I feel pretty confident. Like even in a second round finish, he's probably scoring like 86 or 87 fantasy points. So Lins OSP, I'll pick Lins to win by decision, but once again, a fight that I don't really like all that much. And there's better high price fighters to target. Like the next fight, we have AJ Fletcher, Themba Gorimbo here. And Fletcher, I think, is really talented. He's had some difficult matchups coming into the UFC. Matthew Semmelsberger, not necessarily that he's fighting like highly ranked opponents or anything, but Semmelsberger is a fairly difficult to ask for your first UFC fight. He scored 65 fantasy points in a loss in that one. And then he had to fight Angelusa, and that was one where he looked decent early and then just kind of fatigued late and ended up losing in the later rounds. I think Gorimbo is terrible, though. I think Fletcher could win this by finish. I think he win this by wrestling. And I think even a decision, I think he's live to score fairly well. So Fletcher is one of my favorite pay-up options of the entire slate. I really like going up to him.
Yeah, that Angelusa fight was nuts. Like I'm pretty sure a lot of referees would have stopped this fight at the end of the second with Fletcher getting the win there. And then he was just dead and somehow still survived. Honestly, if the ref stopped that fight in the second, I wouldn't have complained about it. Yeah, this guy Themba, like he's just terrible. So you would think that Fletcher definitely has the multiple paths here. He got, Fletcher got Semmelsberger down 4 times. He didn't land any takedowns in the Lusa fight. He did attempt a couple. He got controlled pretty bad in the 2, but he was just so gassed when he got taken down there. I just think, Fletcher has of the fighters in the top range, Bueno Silva, Carpenter, Pagues, Fletcher, Pagues. I just think Fletcher is the best athlete. He has the best path to victory here. He can finish early. If he doesn't finish early, he could bust. But I just feel like he has all the tools here to get, Gorimbo down. He can knock him out. He can basically do what he wants. I just hope he has a good game plan and capitalizes on it. That's the problem with these fighters. Like, not only are some of these guys pretty low level, their fight IQs are just atrocious. So it's hard trusting these guys. But I just think in the top range, the Fletcher has the highest ceiling.
I know, just some updates too. Sam Cassell Dance in Discord is asking, are there any cancellations today? No fight cancellations. And probably a fight that deserves some cancellations with all the other nonsense on it. Like maybe there should have been. But no cancellations today. And the Marcos saying that he wouldn't rule Mayra Bueno Silva out of the optimal. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say she's a 0% chance, but I don't think it's super likely. And we have her projected for 36% ownership, so I'm not playing her based on that. If she was projected for like sub 10% ownership, then I would say like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting as a contrarian option, but she's really popular and she's the biggest favorite on the slate for a while by a mile. So part of the reason I think is probably dictating some of the ownership there, but not somebody I'm going to be rostering. One more fight left to talk about. Clayton Carpenter against Juan Camilo Ronderos. Another one. I think Carpenter is going to have a massive wrestling and grappling advantage here. Maybe a little bit hard to get up to his salary, but still relative to the other high-end options. Let's see. What do I have in terms of exposure here? I have Fletcher 1. I have Pagues 2, and then I have Clayton Carpenter 3rd in terms of the high-end fighters I'm paying up for. Then Pose be 4th for me, Mayra Bueno Silva 5th. So the really only knock against Clayton Carpenter here is just how much finishing equity does he have, number 1, and then number 2, how easy is it to get up to his salary? So right now I am right around in line with the field on him, but I do find the salary a little bit restrictive. Clayton Carpenter, decent enough option. I'm not taking shots on Ronderos as an underdog. Do you like him at all as an underdog play?
Oh, and I think the reason Carpenter is just in play is because Juan Camilo Ronderos is just so bad.
Yeah.
Like Carpenter won his Dana White Contender Series fight, but he lost the first round pretty badly. He survived, and then he kind of took over with the wrestling. That went to decision. It was, if it was in the UFC on a UFC slate, it wouldn't have scored great. It would have scored okay. The only thing is, Juan Camilo Ronderos is just so bad here. He got melted by David Dvorak in the first round in 2021. Hasn't fought since. I think they're just setting Carpenter up to get a nice win here. Whether he finishes by decision. I don't know. Like Juan Camilo Ronderos is 5'3" with a 64-inch reach. That's nothing. Like Carpenter is going to have a few inches of height, few inches of reach. He lands takedowns. I think, he can get him down. I think he can find a finish just based off how bad Ronderos is. Again, finishing equity in the top range, I think I'd put Fletcher above him. Pahuga above him as well, but I think Carpenter does have some finishing equity here just based off the level of opponent. So like if this was a bigger slate, if we had more fights and, we had, Chito Vera on the slate like he was supposed to be, maybe I wouldn't have Carpenter here, but like I'm taking shots on Carpenter to finish Ronderos just based off how bad Ronderos is.
Yeah, and then talking about the fight, props to go to decision, not go to decision. This fight minus 240 to finish inside the distance, minus 182 to finish under 2.5 rounds. So, all the betting data kind of indicates Carpenter more likely to win by decision than not. Actually, what is his by decision prop? Yeah, Carpenter minus 120 to win inside the distance. So it's one of the more likely outcomes here. And also just because of his wrestling ability, I could see him scoring well and being optimal even a decision win. Like it's not that crazy to think that he would, he could win by decision and land like 5 or 6 takedowns. Would you think that's like crazy or anything?
I think that's a path for sure. I just, I think he can get close to 100 points if he does that with control time. I just like, I don't want to rely on someone who's not historically a finisher to finish. So but on the slate, beggars can't really be choosers here, and his level opponent is so bad. I think you take some stabs.
Yeah, and then Duke Nicole asked, did we skip the Sadykhov fight for a reason? No, we talked about it. It was just one that for me was one of my lower interest fights. We didn't spend as much time on it, but we talked about it. We've hit on all the fights at this point. If you guys, by the way, have any questions, because we got a few minutes here, throw them into YouTube chat, throw them into Discord, and we could start hitting on some of these. But one question here is from Adam Burse. He's saying that he's having a hard time choosing between Jim Miller or Josh Parisian. So here's how I view that comparison. Number one is, what does the rest of your lineup look like, just in terms of how high variance is it? But Jim Miller I view as having more upside, and I think that Parisian has a little bit more win equity. Right? If Jim Miller wins and Parisian both wins, I'm fairly certain Jim Miller outscores him. But just all things being equal, I think Parisian is more likely to pick up the win than Jim Miller. So with that being said, between the two, and also I'm really heavy on Alex Hernandez in this fight, I'll say I prefer Parisian with the caveat of I don't really like Jim Miller or Josh Parisian today. But how about you? Parisian, Jim Miller, which side would you take in a 1v1?
So in GPPs, I think, Parisian has a higher floor. Jim Miller has the way higher ceiling, because if he wins, it's probably going to be by finish. I think Parisian has a better chance to win than Jim Miller. I just think this is an awful matchup for Jim Miller. Do I think either are going to win? No. But if I had to pick one, it would be Jim Miller, just because he's going to score better in GPPs if he does win. If you want to go, I don't want to say safer, but Parisian has pretty good output. He if the fight gets extended to the second, third rounds, he's not going to, look terrible. He's landed 114 significant strikes against Parker Porter. So his output's going to be there. If even in a loss, he may score you, 30, 35 points. Jim Miller, if he loses, could give you 6. So while Jim Miller has the higher ceiling, I think Parisian is a bit safer, has the higher floor.
Oh, I can't believe I built XFL lineups. There's one game going on right now. It's 6-3. It's almost the end of the second quarter. I don't even know what these teams are. VGS against ARL. If I had to guess, it's Arlington and Vegas, but who knows? Nobody knows this. Every game today had a 2-point spread, and the total was 36.5.
Yeah, I just went into the projections on Stokastic and uploaded. I saw Josh Gordon in there, obviously, and Martavius Bryant. Those are the only 2 names I recognized. Yeah,
and Martavius Bryant was I didn't even, so I just built out lineups in Fantasy Cruncher and set some rules in, but I was also I don't know who any of these people are. So we'll end up seeing how that goes. The best guess, probably poorly. Let's see. Any other questions that we have in here? We did have somebody point out overlay-ish. I mean, there's a little bit of it on DK. I didn't check FanDuel. Maybe FanDuel does, but it's still, it's not actually overlay in term, like there's not as much rake as normal, but it's not like actual overlay either. But there are 3,000 spots still available on DK. As far as FanDuel is concerned, yeah, no, those contests. I haven't played FanDuel MMA DFS in forever. I hated their scoring with the.
I don't even know my password for FanDuel anymore. Like I just can't, like, because I play heavy NHL. Their NHL offerings are awful. I like them for MLB just because you don't have to pick the second pitcher. But yeah, FanDuel MMA, not my thing.
By the way, Chad Counts wants to know who's going to be the oldest winner on the card. The oldest? Well, let's see. What are the ages?
Like OSP Felipe Lins, someone has to win, and the youngest guy in that fight is 37.
Yeah, I'll say Felipe Lins.
Yeah, Felipe Lins is 37. So
who else would be?
I don't even know who else.
If Lena Lansberg wins, she's the oldest fighter on the card. I don't think she's likely to win. She's the biggest underdog of the day.
Yeah, I mean Prachnio's 34.
Bueno Silva, I know she isn't that old, but Bueno Silva looks like she's really old.
Bueno Silva is born in the 90s.
Yeah, no, I know. She's 30, she's 31 or 32, but she looks like she's 50.
Yeah, she looks like she's seen some shit in her day. Yeah, it's probably going to be Felipe Lins or Oven St. Preux. Like the other option, I guess, is Lena Lansberg, but I don't think she's going to win.
Yeah, I mean, who's older, Jim Miller or Felipe Lins?
Jim Miller is 39 years old.
Okay. So I guess Jim Miller if Alex Hernandez gasses early, but no, I'm going to go with Felipe Lins. Final answer.
Yeah, same.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for us today. A little bit of a weird card, a lot of variance. So hopefully one of us comes out on top here. Hopefully you guys built some contrarian lineups. I know I did, left some salary on the table. So if you guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck. And don't forget, any package you sign up for using the link below, 50% off on your first package. Going to cover every single DFS sport. Hope you guys enjoy the NBA All-Star break. See you here next week.
Good luck, everybody.